We acknowledge that we were founded on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Attawandaronk, the Mississauga and Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and now live on land that is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We have many representatives working across this land now known as Ontario, and we acknowledge that there are 46 treaties and other agreements that cover the territory. We are grateful to be able to work and live on this land, and thankful to the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who have cared for these territories since time immemorial, and who continue to contribute to the strength of Ontario and to all communities across the province. To continue to center reconciliation, we encourage our team, partners, students, and teachers to take time to learn about the lands they are currently on. Visit native-land.ca for more information.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Gardening 101 virtual field trip today with the Agriculture and Food Museum in Ottawa. So I'm Madison. I'm your host from Agscape today, and I'm excited to have RC today to give you a rundown on the basics of gardening so that you can get your garden ready this spring or another spring whenever you're ready. So depending on where you're located in Ontario, you might be at a different growing point right now. Maybe you're way down south, you have a little bit more sun, a little bit more warmer temperatures. You might be a little bit ahead of the rest of us who are a little bit more north. And those that are way up north, Ontario, have a couple of weeks probably still. So I just wanted to remind everyone, please put your questions in the chat for RC to answer. She'd love to hear from you, anything that you're thinking or curious about. And without further ado, all right, here's RC. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for teaching us all about gardening at the Agriculture and Food Museum. And I will let you just take it away.
Okay, thank you, Madison. So happy to be here with everyone today. So I am outside at the Agriculture and Food Museum in Ottawa. I don't know if anybody is joining us from Ottawa today, or if you've been to this magical, wonderful place. We are a functioning farm. So we have right behind me, actually, we have 50 dairy cows who live in this barn here, and we milk them every day. We also have gardens, we have all the farm animals, and we have exhibitions just like a normal museum. And today, well, you can't see it, but I'm sitting right in front of one of our garden beds. We are about to start planting our gardens. So what a perfect time to share what we're doing here. As Madison said, it might be a little early. The soil has barely just defrosted here, which means it's time to plant some crops that can endure a bit of cold. It's still a bit too cold outside for things that need a lot of heat, and that would be like tomatoes and peppers. So a lot of plants need a certain temperature outside and a certain soil temperature as well. So here in Ottawa, the first planting date for those crops, usually we do it on the long weekend of May, so at the very end of May. Our last frost date, which is the last day we can expect there to be frost, so temperatures 0 and below, is May 11th. So it is still quite early. However, we can start to plant things like carrots, onions, some lettuces, cabbages, even peas, and radishes as well, because these are plants that can take a little bit of cold, and actually they grow better when it's a little bit cooler. They don't like it when it's very, very hot. So they grow better in the spring. And then when summer comes, when the very hot season comes, we replace them with other plants that like a lot of heat and a lot of sun. Summers in Ottawa can be quite hot. So we're lucky here. We can grow some plants that like a lot of heat, that maybe are a little harder to grow in Northern Ontario. An example of this would be okra. So I don't know if anybody's ever eaten okra before, but that is a more tropical type of plant. In Ottawa, we just get just enough heat and sun to be able to grow them. But if you're in, let's say, Chapleau in Northern Ontario, you might not get enough heat and sunlight to grow that crop. So when we're planting our garden, it's very important to look at what we want to grow and whether we can actually grow it where we live. So, speaking of tomatoes and peppers and things that take a little bit longer to grow, I've brought out with me. I'm not going to put them in the garden today, but you can see I've been starting some of these crops inside. I'm just going to pour out a bit of water from here so I can show you better. This here is a self-watering seed starting tray. So you can see it's like a foam base and then another layer of foam here. And in this top layer, we have some soil and our plants are growing out of that soil. So over here, I have some peppers that have been growing indoors for the last, I'd say about about a month. And I have some basil plants. I'm going to try to tilt the camera a bit more so you can see better. There we go. So we have some basil here and some purple basil. And here, well, these were started a little bit too early. These are called cucamelons. They are tiny, tiny little cucumbers that look like little watermelons. They're very cute and they're very delicious. But now you can see they've grown a bit too much. I should have maybe waited a little bit before planting those inside to get them started. So these are all plants that once it's warm enough out here, I'll be able to put into the ground and they'll be quite happy. So how are these plants getting their water? So I'm going to lift up the tray here. Do you see this black thing that's hanging? This is a felt pad, and this dips in a tray of water. And the felt sucks the water up and brings it to the top tray. And what's happening here, I'll try to separate the top tray from the felt pad so you can see a little bit better. Oops, there's soil falling everywhere. You might even see the roots here. Okay, so you can see the little plant, the cells that the plants are growing in, the little containers full of soil. You can see the roots coming off out of the bottom here. So the roots touch the felt pad. I'll just bring the felt pad up. Actually, you can see the roots really have grown, and you can see I kind of broke some of the roots. That's not a problem. They'll grow back. But the roots are growing and taking water directly from the felt pad. This is very handy for me because I don't live at work, thankfully. And sometimes, you know, it can be, we can forget about our little seedlings sometimes. So this can help us make sure that our seedlings, the baby plants, are getting the water that they need, even if we kind of forget about them for a day or two. It also makes sure they're getting just the right amount of water. It is easy to overwater our plants. And unfortunately, a lot of the symptoms of overwatered plants. Oh, I just heard that my microphone might be disconnected. Can you still hear me?
Yep, I can still hear you.
Can you still hear me? Yeah?
Yep, can still hear you.
Okay, so where was I going? So sorry, it just told me in my ear that PC was disconnected. So yeah, the symptoms of a plant that gets too much water is very similar to a plant that is not getting enough water. That means they'll start to wilt, they'll turn yellow. So not enough water and too much water kind of look the same. So you have to learn a little bit about how to properly water your plants. So what about the seeds we can plant directly in the garden? How can we know this? Well, you know what? The plant packets have all the information. So for example, I have a package of peas here, and everything you need to know is actually written on the packet usually. So a lot of people like to skip reading and just go right ahead to planting, but honestly, you can take a minute or two and read and have much more gardening success. And we have to respect what it says. So if it says start outdoors, that is actually what you should do, because some plants grow a lot better if they are started outdoors than indoors. And an example of that is our peas. So I have a tray of peas here. I'm just going to tilt the camera angle again so we can see our peas. That I'm going to plant a couple of these today. Now, peas are nice, chunky, fat seeds, and that's another way we can know whether they'll do well planted directly outside or if we should start them inside. Usually, big chunky seeds, they do really well planted directly in the soil. An example of a seed that doesn't do very well, it can do very well, but we often don't have enough hot weather and sun to actually have a harvest until very, very late in the season is, for example, our tomato seeds. Look how tiny these are. Okay, tomato seeds are very, very small, and we can put them directly in the garden, but that means we might only get tomatoes in like end of September or October. And I don't know about you, but I would like to eat tomatoes in the summer. So starting them inside will make sure that they'll be big enough and grown enough that when we plant them in the ground, they'll be able to take off and start growing, become grown-up plants, and start making tomatoes. And in Ottawa, we usually start eating garden tomatoes about mid-August. So if we don't start them indoors, we might just get green tomatoes until the fall. If you're starting your garden as well, another good thing that we can start that grows quite quickly is beans. These are purple beans here. You can see the seeds. The seeds are not purple, but and the plant is green, but the beans that grow are actually purple. They're very pretty. Oops, I just dropped a couple. Another thing that we like to plant directly in our garden here at the museum is our sunflowers. So again, nice chunky seeds here. They have a lot of food inside of them for the baby plant. Okay, so seeds contain the baby plant, but they also contain the food the baby plant needs until it can make some of its own food through photosynthesis. Okay, so plants will use the sunlight, they'll use water, they'll use carbon dioxide, mix all of that up and create some sugars that they can then use to create their own energy. So plants are what we call autotrophs. That means they can make their own food. So before moving on to the next part, I'll just do a quick demonstration of how I would plant peas, and then I'll show you also how you might, a technique you might want to use if you want to plant smaller seeds, okay? So I'm just going to turn my camera over so we can see the soil away from the sun. Here we go. So I'm just going to try to get it nice and low. Here. Okay, so we can see this nice corner of soil. I've got some beautiful potting soil here. And you can see it's very rich, it's very dark, and it's already moist. This here is full of organic matter, or you might know that as compost. That means it has a lot of food for our plants. Okay, so before starting, I'll just kind of make sure everything is nice and flat and loosened up. If it's really, really the roots won't be able to grow. So everything is nice and prepared here. We had some of our staff look after the garden beds and clean them up after winter. And for something like peas, I just like to make some holes with my finger. And we want to go about 1.5 knuckle deep. But again, the plant envelope will tell you exactly how deep the seed should be. Some seeds need to be closer to the surface, some need to be deeper. With fat, chunky seeds, we can put them a little bit deeper. So I'm going to grab a pea and I'm just going to make a hole about 1.5 knuckles deep here. And I'll just take my seed and pop it in. Okay, and then after that, I'm just going to cover and close up the hole. We don't need to tap very hard. Actually, it's better to leave it a little loose so that when the baby plant starts to emerge, it can actually pop up through the soil and start to grow. It doesn't get trapped underground. And that also means the roots can start to dig their way down and go all the way to the bottom of the planters where they can get a lot of water and they can get their nutrients. If you're planting very small seeds, for example, lettuce seeds or carrot seeds or onion seeds, it can be a little inefficient to make holes and then put a single seed in each hole. So a very easy way to do it is to make a little trench. So I'll just show you what I mean here next to the pea that I planted. Oh, we have our security guard walking by. All right, so I'm holding the camera angle here. Okay, so what I would do is I would make a little slice in the soil using my finger. Okay, I hope you can see making a little slice. And then I would sprinkle my seeds in that little trench that I made, in the little slice in the soil, okay, and cover up that little trench. Again, just like I did with the peas. What that means, though, is you'll have a lot of seeds growing in the same spot. So once your seeds start to grow, then you can go in and pick away some of the extras. So your plant envelope might actually instruct you to do that, to go thin out your seedlings. That's what that means. So it's taking out the extra. So the seeds, the little plants aren't too crowded. So let's say they're all growing like this, then you would take some away so that you only have a couple growing. So I'm going to move on to our next part. Time's flying by. Any questions so far?
Yeah, we have actually a lot of questions in the chat. So thanks everyone for sending them in. So why don't we go over a couple before our next part? And a couple of their questions are going to relate to things we're learning later.
Madison is loading.
Oh, am I frozen?
There you are. Hello.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. One of our questions here is Gordon would like to grow a carrot garden. Do you have any suggestions? And do you know how long they take to grow?
Oh, amazing. Yes, a carrot garden. So my first suggestion is to make sure you have the right soil type, because there are some types of soil that are very, very hard and heavy. We call those clay soils. And carrots might have a really hard time growing down into them. So one of the best ways to grow carrots would be in a raised bed, like the ones that we have here at the museum. You see behind me, that's where I was sitting earlier. So those are raised planters, and we have filled them with potting soil. So potting soil is a special type of soil that you can get at the garden center or, you know, any hardware store this time of the year. And it's perfect for growing plants. It's the right texture. It's the right soil type. So that would be the easiest way. And how long they take to grow? Well, usually your envelope will say how many days it takes for them to grow. I think carrots are around 45 to 60 days. So usually when we plant carrots in the spring here, we can start to harvest them. We'll plant them around the end of May, and then or early May, and we'll start to harvest them in early July. The nice part about carrots is you don't have to wait for them to be fully grown to harvest and eat them. You can eat baby carrots. You can eat them when they're fully ready. So there's a range here. You can also start by planting a few carrots, and then the week after plant a bit more, and then the week after plant a bit more, so that you have carrots growing at different times, and then you can harvest them throughout summer. So I hope that helps answer your question. The carrots from the garden are delicious, and they taste so different from store-bought carrots. So I hope you do try that out.
Absolutely. Thank you. Another question we have here is, what's the main fruit or vegetable that you grow there?
What main fruit and vegetable that we grow here? So we do a lot of tomatoes. We love our tomatoes because there's so many different kinds that we don't find in the store. So summer's a very special time for us. We all love our 20 varieties of tomatoes. There's actually, I think this year we're going to be planting 15 kinds of tomatoes. So that's the main one. And then we grow a lot of herbs and herbs and spices. So I can actually take you over to one of our garden plots here that has some of our herbs growing. We also grow peas, beans, and lettuces. So down here, we have our herb garden, and some of the plants in here are what we call perennials. So that means they come back year after year. So we have sage growing right here. So it's just branches that are dry right now, but soon there's going to start to be leaves coming out. We have some mint. We have some rosemary, some tarragon. We also have some curry here. And what else? We have some savory. So we really love growing our herbs as well. And we're going to put some basil in here as well. So a lot of herbs, actually, once you plant them, they'll keep growing back every year. They'll survive winter, and then you don't need to plant them again. So that's a really nice thing.
Perfect. Amazing. Okay, let's do one or two more and then we can
Okay.
move on. I'm not sure if you know this, but what are the white things in the potting soil?
Yes, so the white things in potting soil is called perlite. And perlite is a type of volcanic rock. And what that does is to help with aeration and drainage. What that means is that it helps water and air be in the soil, and it helps water drain out of the soil. So it helps keep the soil nice and loose and make sure that there's not too much water in it. And it also makes sure that there's enough air in the soil, because did you know that actually roots need to touch air to be able to absorb nutrients? So roots need water, but they also need air. And without air, the roots can't take up the plant food. So interesting question, because actually we're going to go into our next space here. Okay, so I am now in the Eco Explorium. I've just come inside. And this space here is where we talk about bugs and plants and how they help each other. And I'm going to show you something in the corner here called a hydroponic unit. Ta-da! This strange egg here is a way that we can actually grow plants inside without soil. And right now we're actually between growing cycles. I'm just about to start growing something else in here. We had some lettuces. But this strange thing, I'll just open up one of the windows so you can see it has lights to replace the sun. And there's a space, you can't really see a little too much light. There's a space down here where water and plant food goes. And in these holes here is where, it's almost too much light, is where the plants grow. In Madison, I'm wondering if you could throw up a couple pictures of our plants growing in this hydroponic unit. There we go. That is our lettuce we were growing. So we had various kinds of lettuce growing in this unit, and we harvested it all and had a nice big salad lunch here. So what's happening here, and we can maybe show the next picture. So the plant roots are growing in something called rock wool. Rock wool is not soil. It's kind of like house insulation. And the roots grow into it and out of it. And the roots grow into the central column of the unit here. What happens is the machine makes some fog with the water that we have in the bottom. And the fog goes up into the column and coats the roots and gives them water and food. They get air, obviously, and that's how the plants can grow. So we don't necessarily need to grow our plants in soil as long as the roots have somewhere to grow. And maybe you can show the next picture. After I harvested the lettuce, here's what it looked like. Okay, so these are the lettuce roots growing in the rock wool and into the column. And so you just need somewhere for the roots to anchor, and then you have to have a way to provide the plant with water and the food that they need. So nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and other microelements. So usually for us, it's a little powder scoop that we put in the water, just kind of, just like fertilizer. And the machine makes sure that the roots can get it. So as long as you have light, proper aeration, and plant food, you can grow indoors. I have one last thing to show you here, and it is our vermicompost bin. So I'll back up so you can see. So in here, there's actually billions of living things, okay, who recycle our food scraps and our paper, hand paper towel waste into plant food. So this is called vermicomposting. So we're using the power of worms and their friends to transform things that we would consider waste into a new resource that we can then use in our gardens. So in here, the worms, they'll eat the paper, they'll eat the plant or the food scraps, and when they poop it out, it makes compost. Okay, so I'm just gonna dig. Maybe I can ask Sam for a hand here. Could you possibly hold this for me while I dig a little bit? So I've got my friend Sam here to help me out. Okay, so you can tilt a little bit like this. Perfect. So I'm gonna dig around here. You can actually see a little bit more tilt. Yeah, that's okay. So you can actually see here, this is a seed from a squash that has been growing in the vermicompost bin because it is so damp and full of nutrients. So as I dig and dig here, I'll dig in the corner. Hopefully I'll be able to find some of our worm friends. Yes, here they are. So you can untilt a bit. There we go. So I don't know if you can see right here. I'm going to grab one in my hand. Okay, so these are tiny worms called red wigglers. And red wigglers, they eat their whole weight in food every day. And the brown stuff you see, all of this here, is all their worm poop, which is also fertilizer. Okay, so there's thousands and thousands of worms in here, but they're not alone. There's actually a lot of other living critters helping out. And so this is one of the ways that we make compost for our gardens here at the museum. Thank you so much, Sam. So do we have any questions about what we just saw or learned here?
Yeah, absolutely. We got lots of great questions.
Awesome.
So one of the ones about the hydroponic unit here,
Yes.
Does hydroponic lettuce taste different than lettuce bought from the store or grown in soil?
I would say it tastes a little different from the lettuce bought in the store because when you pick it, it is so fresh and you can taste, it tastes a little bit more complex. I find lettuce from the store sometimes tastes a little watery. Maybe there's not much flavor to it, but lettuce that we grow in the garden or in the hydroponic unit is very tasty. It has a lot more flavor than what we're used to. So I would say it does taste different. I find it grows really well in the hydroponic unit. Sometimes it's difficult outside because lettuce can get a little too much sun if we don't pick the right planting location. Lettuce prefers it a little cooler, a little less sunny. So if we're not planting it in the right spot and if we're not harvesting it at the right time, it can taste bitter and not very good in the mouth. So there's different, definitely different, I would say.
Very cool. Okay, we have a lot of classes that are interested in learning a little bit more about if they're growing just in their classroom instead of outside. Do you have any recommendations for what plants can grow the fastest in the classroom or any tips or tricks?
Yes, absolutely. So beans and peas will be probably the fastest growing plants, and we've grown some beans inside and had them actually produce beans in about within 2 months. They also, because they have so many built-in nutrients, you can grow them without a lot of soil. So you could have just a little cup, a little solo cup, drink cup, and with soil, and that's plenty for the bean to be able to grow and to make beans. I think the key element really is light. Okay, so it's really tricky to provide enough light to plants when we're growing inside. So if we're growing inside, often window light is not quite enough. We'll need to add some extra light. So luckily those are easy to find nowadays. We can add some extra lighting that we can buy again at like hardware stores, things like that. Or you could take your plants outside during the day, bring them in at night. That's also an option.
Okay, perfect. Another question here. While herbs can come back every year, we thought that because Ontario is so cold, many herbs need to be replanted yearly. Is that true?
Yeah, so many of them will need to be replanted yearly. Like some herbs are what we call annuals. So they have an annual life cycle, which means they will grow, make their seeds, and die all in 1 year, and they won't come back. But some plants, like rosemary, I'll just use rosemary, sage, thyme. They have a lot of roots, and those roots in winter, if they're well covered and protected, they can survive winter and they'll restart to grow again in the spring. And often it looks dead at the surface, like here maybe you saw our sage look completely dead, but we just have to wait. We have to be patient, and then the plant will start to regrow from the root ball. Okay, so we again, depending on where you are in Ontario, but here I've had no problems regrowing sage year to year, regrowing thyme, savory, things like that, and even lavender. Lavender is a hot weather plant, but they have plant scientists and plant growers have created some or bred some varieties or some kinds of lavender that do really well here, that can survive winter, which is maybe not the case with the original lavender plants, so to speak. So that's the importance of having plant scientists and plant breeders, is that they can make some new crops that are actually very well suited for our climate.
Great. Okay. This is a question for 123 online. In the spring, do you plant most of the flowers or crops? And you plant them at other times of the year?
Yeah, we definitely plant most of them in the spring. However, we often do a second planting in August when things start to cool down a little bit. A lot of our plants might have had their full life cycle at that point. For example, if we're talking peas or even some sunflowers, we can plant twice in the year. But as long, again, as it's not too hot, because seeds need it to be a little cooler and moist to be able to grow and germinate and sprout. So we'll plant maybe mid-August. We'll usually plant a second planting. So as long as it's not too hot and dry, seeds usually can sprout pretty much at any time. Now, will there be enough time before winter comes for them to flower again? It depends on each individual plant as well.
Right. That's perfect. We have a lot of great questions coming in, and
that's awesome.
we're not going to be able to get to all of them, but hopefully we can help with your growing that you're planning on doing. So here's another question from a class. They're growing strawberries in containers. Any suggestions?
Okay, so whenever we're growing in containers, we have to be very mindful about two things. One, proper watering, especially for strawberries. Strawberries, the fruit takes a lot of water, and consistent. That means we have to be, it has to always be a certain moisture. We don't want to let them completely dry out. So we have to make sure we're providing them a little bit of water often. And the second thing when we're growing in containers is that plants that need a lot of plant food can often run out of it unless we add some fertilizers. So we don't want to also over fertilize. So it's a good idea to maybe do a light fertilizing, maybe every 2 weeks, I would say. Just water with a bit of plant food dissolved in water with the instructions. Follow the instructions on your plant food so that you're making sure you're not using too much, because too much, again, is just as bad as too little. We can burn our plants, and we don't want that. But for strawberries to grow and to have good fruit and big fruit, they're going to need a lot of plant food. And in containers, sometimes the plant just takes all the nutrients, all the plant food that's there, and then there's nothing left for it to make fruit with. So fertilizing and water would be important. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. A question about the worms and the compost. They'd like to know how long it takes worms to break down the compost.
Okay, so it really depends on what type of food we put in it. For example, if we put a carrot might take a little bit longer because a carrot is hard and worms don't have teeth. So we have to wait for the microbes, for bacteria, mushrooms, and things to make the carrot a little soft. And then it's like a little Slurpee that the worm can drink up and turn into compost. So that might take like, I'm going to say like 2 or 3 weeks. But if we put lettuce in there, the lettuce gets or bananas. I'm going to use bananas because that's an easier example. So bananas are already very soft. Sometimes they turn soft in our lunch boxes, right? So a banana, if we have a brown old banana we put in there, the worms can almost right away eat it and turn it to compost. So it can be in as little as a week. A friend and I put a camera in our vermicompost one time and did a time lapse, and it only took the worms 10 days to eat an entire half of an apple. So it can be really quick.
It is very impressive because they are not very big.
No, they eat about their own weight every day. So when you have thousands of them, it can go pretty quickly.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. All right, well, we only have time probably for maybe 2-3 more questions here. So this one is from Lily, and she's wondering what your favorite thing to plant is.
Ooh, my favorite thing to plant. I love, again, tomatoes, I think, are my favorite thing because you can get so many flavors and so many kinds. And tomatoes grown in our garden taste so different from tomatoes we can grow in the store. But I also love to grow what we would call pollinator plants, so native plants. I love to grow plants that grow in the wild here in Canada because often they're very beautiful and they help to provide food like pollen and nectar to wild critters, which I love. So I love to watch all the wild bees and the bugs, go and visit them because to me, I just find them so interesting. So I like to eat tomatoes, so I love to plant that. And basil because I love to make homemade pesto. It's one of my favorite things about summer. And the wild plants, yeah.
I think we had a class here that was interested in growing some basil as well. Do you have any tips for them for basil?
Yes, absolutely. So I wish I had my basil tray with me, but one of the main tips for growing basil comes to how to make the plant bushy, because often basil wants to grow very tall and long, but we can trick it into growing more branches. Okay, so what we would do is we harvest by pinching off the top. We don't want to pull off the leaves. And maybe I'll just run outside to be able to show you what I mean. I'll do it right live on camera so you get a good instruction here. So for our basil, okay, so I've got my basil right over here. Like this. Okay, so see how I'll just try to tilt the camera properly. Okay, so basil right over here. Okay, so I don't want to pick a leaf off because now we're just getting rid of a leaf. What I want to do is I'm going to want to pick off the entire top of it. See, I picked off the entire top. Okay, so what's left are these 2 leaves here, but also I left tiny little buds, and you probably can't see them on camera here, but there are 2 little nubbins growing between the stem and the leaves. Those little nubs are actually going to become branches themselves, and they're going to grow leaves. So when we're picking our harvest, or when we have our seedlings, we can pick off the top, leave those 2 leaves and the little nubs, and those nubs are going to make 2 branches. And you can keep doing that, and 2 branches will turn into 4 branches, and so on and so forth. So we can actually get a basil bush. Another thing is to harvest it before it flowers. So once it starts to flower, if we leave it to flower, the plant itself is going to start to turn yellow and die. It's going to end its life cycle, and then we kind of missed out. So we want to harvest it while it doesn't have flowers yet.
Very cool. It seems so interesting to have to pick off half the plant to then make it grow better.
It definitely seems counterintuitive. It feels like it's a wrong thing to do, but I assure you, you do that actually with most plants, and it will make your plant go bushy. You can do the same thing with peppers, with tomatoes. The idea is really you have to make sure you leave those tiny little buds. And if you look at the plant closely, you'll see them. The little buds are growing between the leaf and the stem. And those are areas that can have the potential to become a whole new branch. So as long as you leave those, you're good. You have to leave some leaves as well, right?
Perfect. Okay, this will be our final question for today, and I have no idea if you know the answer, but I'm curious as well.
Try it out.
Can you grow vegetables and fruits in space?
Ooh, okay. I love that question. The answer is yes, they have done it. They've been able to grow some lettuces in space, but they have some special ways to do it. So they do it without soil, because in space, without gravity, plants can't take water up the same way as they do on Earth. So that's a whole wild concept. So they had to grow plants using hydroponics, just like what I showed you inside. So just with water and nutrients in special chambers. So they have been able to grow lettuces. They're also trying to grow other stuff, especially if we're going to start sending humans on very long space missions. It'd be nice if they could get some fresh grown food. So it is something that scientists are working on, and it's very cool technology.
That is very cool. I had no idea. Amazing.
Yeah, you can look up the Canadian Space Agency Food and Space project or contest. They actually had a contest for people to come up with ways to grow food in space. It's really cool.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Maybe the classes can get inspired and do a little space plant project.
Totally, yeah.
Amazing. Okay, well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for showing us around the Agriculture and Food Museum, for teaching us all about gardening, giving us some tips and tricks for what we're hoping to do in the classroom. And thank you, everyone that is watching, for your wonderful questions. There's still so many that we didn't get to that are so great. So hopefully you continue your learning in the class, and hopefully anything you're trying to grow this year is successful. And if not, it's a learning experience.
That's it.
Yeah, go ahead, RC. Any last comments for the class?
I would say for me, I learned to garden through trial and error. The first couple years, things didn't necessarily go as planned, but you live and you learn, and it's all about trying things out. And when things don't work out, we can do a little research. We can look up maybe like, what was the problem here? Maybe what did I do that I could have done differently? So I encourage everybody to try their hand. And if you're ever in Ottawa this summer, or maybe you live in Ottawa, come and visit us. It's a great place to learn about farming, and you can talk to people like me and ask your questions about farming. We love to answer all of the crazy questions out there.
Perfect. Thanks so much, RC, for today. And thank you, everyone, for joining. We hope to see you again soon. We do have a gelato virtual field trip coming up in a couple of weeks to learn how we get gelato from milk and cows. So hopefully we'll see you there, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.